Hey there, internet friends. Welcome to That D Plus Show. Class is in session for the only show from that nerdy site that lets you know what kind of quality to expect right from the name. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and each week we dive into a different Disney Plus offering and discuss its history, how it holds up today, and our general impressions. If you enjoy the show, please remember to like, comment, subscribe, rate, review, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. Joining me today, we have Frank Bazzani. How you doing, Frank?
Doing good.
Excellent. This is going to be a fun one. We're going to be talking all about dinosaurs today. Specifically, that would be the Muppet Show Dinosaurs from the early 90s. And specifically, as we often do when we dive into these kind of like TV show-centric episodes of that D Plus show, we're going to be specifically focusing on 4 particular episodes today. The pilot episode, the Mighty Megalosaurus, Season 1, Episode 1. Family Challenge from Season 2, Episode 2, New Leaf from Season 2, Episode 17, and Georgie Must Die, Season 4, Episode 14. Georgie Must Die, I think is like the last episode in either the IMDb or on the show listing. I don't remember, but it's not actually like the finale episode. But it was like it was almost the finale episode, or like maybe it was the last one they shot or something like that. But
I thought that was so fascinating because it's like it was the last one broadcast or something too. So it's listed last on IMDb, but then so it's a finale, but then it's not the finale. And then on Disney Plus they have the finale listed last. They have it listed in correct order, and I thought all that was so interesting.
Yeah, because when I saw that this was like the last one on IMDb, I remember a couple months ago a meme kind of making the rounds on Twitter or something was like the finale of Dinosaurs didn't need to go that hard or whatever. And because it was the spoilers for the finale of a TV show about dinosaurs, but it's basically like the meteor coming in and crashing, which they peppered in as like a runner throughout the series anyway. But it's it actually comes in. It's just kind of like this final moment of existential dread as the family just kind of comes together and realizes that this is it. And so when I was going through, because you had kind of picked out these episodes to go through, and when I was like, oh, are we watching that one? And then it was like, no, that one wasn't the Barney spinoff or Barney parody episode. Nope. So it's just, but yeah, it was a, fascinating thing just in that whole, a TV show run order versus production order or whatever. But anyway,
I kind of wanted to pick that one, but I know it's such a bummer. I even remember it being such a downer that I was like, hey, let's keep the happy ones.
Yeah, that's fair. So Frank, why are we talking about dinosaurs today?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, it's an incredibly, I think, nostalgic show, or at least if you watched it at the time. I'm all about that nostalgia, and that's
I was gonna say this is what the show came out in 91, years before you were born.
Yes,
so,
yeah. So it was already over by the time I was born.
Exactly. How is this nostalgia for you?
So well, it's because that's what I was going to mention is I still watched it a ton growing up, or at least a little bit, because it wasn't in syndication a bunch. But my sister is a gigantic fan of the show, and she had the full DVD that they did.
Okay.
And so it was a DVD. So this was after even VHS. It was they had done some kind of a full release of all the seasons on one DVD box set, and it was kind of thick, like the Simpsons DVD season box sets.
Yeah.
And it had the dinosaurs on the front of it. And I remember watching that a little bit, and I definitely haven't seen every episode, but it was definitely a memory from my childhood of watching this show. And the thing I kind of think I had mentioned a little bit before we started recording is it's a huge childhood memory for us and my family. My sister had the doll of the baby, and it talked, and it just said all the same voice lines over and over and over again. And I think it's so funny because my mom hated this thing,
of
and
course.
My mom and because I know she hated it. She's never said she hated it, but I know she does because if you bring it up, she it just she makes a face, and it's
it triggers a visceral response in her. Yeah.
Yes, 100%. And she could tell you all the quotes of like what it used to say. Like she knows. And because then the ultimate funny story with it is my sister ended up damaging it because it's always was talking about how like it was hungry.
Mm-hmm.
So she tried to like feed it Doritos or something and it got all like orange. And my mom was like, all right, that's it, in the trash. It's gone. It's ruined. And I think that's so funny because like nobody knows, I guess my family, but my mom was super crafty. I imagine she could have fixed that very easily. But that was her excuse. She was like, this thing is getting out of my house.
Yeah. Or it wasn't even dead. It just had like some Cheeto crumb dust on its face or something like that. And so it looked a little orange. And she was like, finally, I have an excuse. Oh, he can't talk anymore because he's got like the food in his face. Trash. I love that. Yeah. I mean, as somebody who grew up with this show, who grew up with like Furbies and like Tickle Me Elmo was past my time or whatever, but like I remember that being like the big craze in that time. Like I remember that doll. I don't think we ever had that doll. I think my dad would have like snapped and like exploded at it or something. But I remember seeing that doll in stores and like it was one of those things that had like the try me kind of thing. And so like I remember when we would go to like the toy section of a store, pushing it and hearing all the lines and stuff like that. Because yeah, this, I mean, for me, this actually is genuine nostalgia. The show came out when I was a kid. I was like, I was 6 years old when it came out, I think, or like 5 turning 6 pretty much. Or maybe I had just turned 6 years old when this show came out is how it times out. And so like I would have watched it like growing up and kind of enjoying it. Cause yeah, I think all told, I think it only has like 65 episodes. So it probably didn't really make syndication in a traditional sense because syndication is typically like 100 episodes, but it might have been like in running and repeats in, like on Nickelodeon or whoever kind of like produced it. It might have been like running on there, but like it's definitely a show like I remember watching probably at the time. And coming back and watching it now, it's like, oh, I definitely did not get these jokes. I was definitely responding to like the catchphrases of the baby and the not the mama and like I'm the baby, gotta love me. In the same way, like I mentioned before we started recording, like this coming out in the year or two after The Simpsons and everyone just seeing Bart Simpson blow up and be like posted everywhere with like cowabunga, eat my shorts, all those things. Like the baby is just that. it's just copying that, but with a dinosaur and Muppets skin kind of on top of it. And it's fascinating kind of knowing that now and just seeing that. Yeah, this is like we obviously both have like weirdly different nostalgia points on this, but we've also been toying about the idea of doing this episode since Dinosaurs came to Disney Plus back at the end of January of this year, and we just haven't like been able to kind of make it work and figure out a place to slot it in. So we're finally doing it now here in November, right before we dive into the holiday run of things. So yeah, the show originally aired between basically April of 1991 and October of 1994, ran for like 3.5, 4 seasons effectively. Like the 4th season was kind of one of those shorter seasons. And the episodes we're going to be talking about today, as I mentioned, the Mighty Megalosaurus originally aired as the pilot episode, April 26, 1991. Family Challenge originally aired September 25th, 1991. A New Leaf aired February 5th, 1992, and Georgie Must Die was the final aired episode, as you kind of mentioned earlier, airing on October 19th, 1994. Other releases of the time that I've pulled in here, basically other series that debuted in 1991. It was like going through this list, and I basically just pulled this list from like Wikipedia of like TV show debuts in 1991. This is another list that just like runs down like my childhood. You had a couple months before this came out, you had on February 9th, The Adventures of Pete and Pete, staple of my childhood. March 1st, Clarissa Explains It All, absolute staple of my childhood. Huge crush on Melissa Joan Hart when I was growing up, and I loved any episode where she would like create a video game on her computer and like play the game in the show. Coming out after this, a couple months, July 4th of 1991, we had Salute Your Shorts, another staple of my childhood. The like day that changed animation for me and a generation of kids forever, August 11th, saw the debut of Doug, Rugrats, and the Ren and Stimpy Show. All in one night on Nickelodeon. On September 17th, we had the debut of Home Improvement. And September 20th, this isn't one that I watched like a ton, but it was definitely one of those that was like always around the shows that I watched, and that was Step by Step. I would I feel like my memories of Step by Step are more like, oh, I was watching Family Matters, and then that ended, and Step by Step was what was coming on next, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna go play video games now, or like Saved by the Bell, or Boy Meets World, or whatever. Like Step by Step was always the like, okay, I can leave now. I don't really care about this show too much, but still,
that's my same memory of it. Is it's just even watching the syndication of things, even just being like, all right, I'm gonna go find something else to watch now.
Yeah. As with most sitcoms, these episodes run in the ballpark of 23, 24 minutes, with a handful of minutes of commercial time. Diving into the roll call, we had across the 4 episodes we're talking about today, we had 3 different directors. For the Mighty Megalosaurus, we had William Deere was the director. He only directed the pilot episode of Dinosaurs.
Oh, interesting.
Prior to that, he had directed the film Harry and the Hendersons. And then after Dinosaurs, he would go on to direct the film Angels in the Outfield.
Hell yeah.
So I was like, nice. I remember both of those things. For the episode Family Challenge, Bruce Bilson directed that one. He also directed a total of 17 episodes of Dinosaurs. Family Challenge was the first one he worked on. He also directed multiple episodes of the TV series Get Smart, The Odd Couple, Viper, and many, many more shows. I want to point out, just as a like peek behind the curtain, shout out to Frank, who put together the doc for this episode. Typically, I'm the one that kind of like pulls all this information together, and I pulled a little bit here and there for this one, but like a lot of this is like Frank pulled these things and kind of did a lot of the legwork on this one. So shout out tip of the hat to Frank on this one. Because like I see Viper there and I'm like, I have no idea what Viper is, but Frank pulled that. So yeah, is it anything of note? Is that a show that you actually know, or is that just like you saw it on the IMDb page and we're like, I'm gonna log it?
It is a show I know. I wouldn't particularly say it's worth of noting, but it was like a crime show that took place around a Dodge Viper. So you knew it came out in the late 90s because it was about it. And the Viper could transform into like 2 different Vipers, kind of like the Batmobile. There was like a day Viper and a night Viper kind of thing.
Okay, so it was basically like one of the other networks being like, how do we do this Knight Rider thing, but make it like even more edgy and cool for the kids? We'll do a Dodge Viper and it can transform like those Transformer toys these kids like.
and it has that late 90s CG transformation that like I know you could just probably picture off the top of your head. Like
yeah, probably got like synth sound effects, pew 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 pew. Kind of thing. Well, directing our last 2 episodes, A New Leaf and Georgie Must Die, we have Mark Broll, who directed 6 episodes of Dinosaurs, with A New Leaf being his first foray, and Georgie Must Die, of course, as the final episode being the last. He also produced a total of 50 episodes of the series. And he was a supervising producer for basically he produced the whole series. He was a regular producer on the first 50 and then supervising producer in the last season there. He also was a producer on the Jeff Foxworthy Show and a senior story producer for 27 episodes of Big Brother in 2001. Is that like I wonder how many episodes of Big Brother there were in 2001. Probably, I would guess probably 27, right? He probably just did a season of Big Brother.
That's kind of what I assumed. Yeah, it's like he was just there for one season, but I thought that I kind of put that in for like jazz almost, where I was like, shout out to Big Brother.
There you go. Yeah, shout out.
And then I like the Jeff Foxworthy Show.
I don't think we'd ever have like a natural place for this to come up. My dad, when I was growing up, he worked at the swap meet in Phoenix. It's called Park and Swap downtown. It's basically like big old parking lot, and people kind of go down there on the weekends and open, like they have stalls and just kind of sell, whatever they have down there. When Jeff Foxworthy and Bill Engvall and them were doing the Blue Collar Comedy Tour,
Yep.
when they came through Phoenix, they like as part of like the documentary stuff they were filming, they went to Park and Swap, and Jeff Foxworthy went into my dad's stall. My dad, he had his like cell phone business called Photogenics, and he would take people's pictures and put the pictures on like mugs and T-shirts and like calendars and kitschy stuff like that. And Jeff Foxworthy came in with like quote unquote incognito, in that like he had a film crew, a documentary film crew that they used for the like as kind of like special features for the Blue Collar Comedy special DVD or whatever. But he came in with like fake teeth that made him look way more jacked up and kind of stuff. So like, if you look at the picture that my dad took of Jeff Foxworthy, you kind of wouldn't really know it was Jeff Foxworthy. Like you can kind of see it, but it definitely doesn't like look like his smile or whatever. But Jeff Foxworthy basically had like a mug made that he then gave to like Bill Engvall as just like a a gag gift between the two of them. And so yeah, it's like my family / my dad's connection to Jeff Foxworthy was he took his picture one day for a thing, and like
awesome.
My dad had to like sign a release, because they didn't know if they were going to use this stuff for the DVD. I don't like in the DVD. I remember looking like there's like stuff where they're clearly at like Park and Swap, and you can kind of see that stuff. But I don't think like my dad ends up making the cut or anything. But he kept like a duplicate picture of the Jeff Foxworthy print that he put on the mug. He kept that like on his stall basically the rest of the time he was doing that little side business kind of thing. And so it was a fun little Jeff Foxworthy tie-in. So
that's awesome.
So thanks for bringing the Jeff Foxworthy show up. So I had a reason to tell that story. And shout out to my dad for getting to meet Jeff Foxworthy. and I don't know if he met anybody else from the tour, because it was like those two and then like Larry the Cable Guy and Ron White I think were the four.
Exactly.
So yeah, like they were all there that day, but he might have only met Jeff Foxworthy.
That's totally funny, because I remember when they were touring, and I remember them coming through town. So that's funny. I didn't even know you had a story that like related to like meeting them.
Yep. It was kind of thing like I would occasionally go down and like work and help my dad out like on weekends, and he'd pay me, I don't remember, like I probably like a less than minimum wage kind of thing, but I was also just kind of like there helping. And I was, like 12 or 13 or whatever doing this kind of stuff. And so yeah, it was one of those things of like, oh man, I wish I'd been there. Cause I was a fan of like, we listened to the, like, You Might Be a Redneck kind of albums and Here's Your Sign from Bill Engvall, like all the time, like those like comedy bits, growing up. So yeah, it was a fun little tie in there. Back to Dinosaurs though. On the writer's side of things, for the Mighty Megalosaurus, we had Michael Jacobs, was the writer of that one, as well as Bob Young. Both of them only wrote 2 episodes, but they were also the co-creators of the series. Michael Jacobs also created Charles in Charge, and then he would go on to be one of the creators of Boy Meets World and many, many years later, Girl Meets World. While Bob Young would also go on to create the series Melissa and Joey with Melissa Joan Hart and Joey Lawrence. For Family Challenge, that was written by Tim Doyle, who wrote on 9 episodes of Dinosaurs, and he would also go on to be a producer for The Big Bang Theory, Rules of Engagement, and Roseanne. New Leaf was written by Rob Yulin, who wrote 4 episodes of the show, as well as writing credits on. He wrote 4 full episodes, and he was like writers, on the writing staff for many other episodes. He also would go on to write for Roseanne, as well as Malcolm in the Middle. And then the duo for Georgie Must Die was written by Dave Kaplan and Brian LePan, who combined, they together, I imagine they were a writing team, wrote on 9 episodes of Dinosaurs. And they also would go on to write for Roseanne. And then Dave Kaplan also wrote on The Drew Carey Show and The George Lopez Show as well. So yeah, then diving into the cast for our kind of when we've done the Muppet stuff before, we occasionally do like, oh, the Muppet performers, and then like but in those cases, it's usually like, oh, that Muppet performer is like performing the Muppet and doing the voice. Here, we're really only going to focus on the voices, but know that like the bodies of the Muppets or of everybody in this show, or doing the animatronics of the heads or whatever, like most of those are Muppets staples, especially of the time. But for the voices here, we had Stuart Pankin as Earl Sinclair on all 65 episodes of the series. Also known for his roles in Congo, Arachnophobia, and Fatal Attraction. He's definitely one of those like character actor guys that like I would not have like pegged him as the voice of Earl, but like I've seen him in so many things over the years. Stuart Pankin. You and I talked about this a little while ago, I think, Frank, but and then it also kind of like a lot more people remembered it following her recent passing. But Jessica Walter played Fran, the mom. She voiced Fran also in all 65 episodes of the show. Many more notable roles kind of over the rest of her career, including, of course, Arrested Development and Archer.
And because that was what I definitely knew her from, and like I was a huge Arrested Development fan, even like from back like around the time it got like off the air. I didn't watch it when it was on the air. I caught it later, but I was like, oh, and then when Archer became a thing, I was like, yeah, Jessica Walter, she's amazing, and I had no idea this entire time that she was Fran from Dinosaurs. And watching it, like I didn't get a ton of her like voice in it. Like I mean, it kind of is her, but I guess I just like. It's a little bit different than what I associate with her being like Lucille.
Right. I mean, yeah, exactly. It's her 15 years, 20 years younger than Lucille pretty much. So yeah, it's significantly like earlier in the career really. And yeah, I knowing that and remembering that kind of going into it, I could hear her, but it is like a different variation. It's versus like her iconic kind of Lucille voice that then also goes into being Mallory Archer in her later years. This is kind of like a lighter version of that. She's not necessarily even trying to play like a character actor or a big kind of thing. She's the mom. She's the Marge of this show, basically. So, kind of keeping it just kind of like, not nothing crazy in the way that Lucille or Mallory are crazy. Yeah. Jason Willinger playing Robbie Sinclair. He voiced Robbie in all 65 episodes of the show. He was also credited in a Goofy movie, which we always love bringing up when we can. Yep. He was additional voices in a Goofy movie, and we will have another Goofy movie somewhere in the coming credits as well. Sally Struthers playing Charlene Sinclair was in all but one of the episodes. She also known, of course, for her roles in All in the Family and Gilmore Girls. Admittedly, whenever I hear Sally Struthers, I just think of South Park, because I'm pretty sure in like one of those early seasons, they kind of like made her the like face of the like, if you want to adopt a kid in Africa, like she's the one that basically like, it's like, here's how you adopt Starvin' Marvin in one of those, like, I think season 1 of South Park or whatever. So like she was like a parody kind of version of that character in those early seasons, and like that meant she was also like a parody in like the video games and stuff like that, and they just kind of like poked fun at that character. So like, and I wouldn't have pegged her as Charlene and All in the Families before my time, certainly, and Gilmore Girls I never watched. So like so I had no reference for who Sally Struthers was apart from Kyle and Cartman and Eric and Stan kind of all like, crapping on her in those early South Park episodes. But
no, I forgot that was even a thing. But now that you say it, I completely remember that. I remember they almost make her like a Jabba the Hutt parody.
Yep. Yeah, because basically like, oh, it's all a ploy. She's just getting all the food, and like all the kids are still starving. Basically, was I think the thing there. But yeah, nope. Here she's playing Charlene. Sam McMurray voices Roy Hess across 50 episodes of the series. Correct me if I'm wrong. Roy's basically like Earl's buddy, right? That was
Yeah.
his buddy character. Yeah. Also known for his roles in Raising Arizona, which I was almost in, Drop Dead Gorgeous, L.A. Story, and Adam's Family Values. He's another one of those like character actors. Like you know him if you see him, and you even from this you kind of like recognize his voice when you hear him and stuff.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then we have Kevin Clash as Baby Sinclair, who voiced Baby for 64 episodes of the series. Also plays the voice of Howard Hand Up Me, or Hand Up Me. I think you put it in Hand Me Up, but yeah, it's Hand Up Me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And then he's also the voice of Elmo, having been playing Elmo since 1987. Also a couple little guests / like recurring character that we have in these episodes. We have Sherman Helmsley as BP Richfield, aka Earl's boss, voiced BP Richfield in 29 episodes of the series. Like even that, I like definitely didn't get at the time that it was like BP like oil. Until like watching it and of course now watching it at the age of 36 and being like, oh, got it. That's a clever joke. A clever British petroleum joke. He is, of course, known for many, many things, including All in the Family, The Jeffersons, The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and many other shows over the years. And then also making an appearance in that first episode, and then I think occasionally kind of throughout the series, you had Brian Henson as Arthur Rizek. Of course, Brian Henson being the son of Jim Henson, as well as the voice of Hoggle in Labyrinth. And he, as we discussed most recently in our Muppets Haunted Mansion episode, also directed basically the Muppet movies around this era, aka Muppet Christmas Carol and Muppet Treasure Island. Moving on to Family Challenge, we have the addition, for the sake of this episode, of Florence Stanley as Grandma Ethel Phillips. Florence Stanley voiced Grandma Ethel in 33 episodes of the show. She is also credited as the waitress in A Goofy Movie. In A New Leaf, we get a fun little guest kind of role, who was a recurring kind of character throughout the series. Christopher Maloney as Spike, who as soon as Spike came on screen, I was like, oh, I remember this guy. He voiced Spike across 11 episodes of the series, and he is, of course, also known as Elliot Stabler from Law & Order, SVU. He's also in Man of Steel and, of course, Wet Hot American Summer. And then finally, in Georgie Must Die, we have a trio of other kind of guests there. We have Alan Troutman as Georgie, the very clear Barney parody. He's one of the puppeteers for Fran over the course of the series. And then he also was, many miscellaneous characters over the course of the show. Ed Asner coming in as evil Georgie. Ed Asner's only appearance on the show Dinosaurs, but of course also known for many, many roles, including Up, Elf, Mary Tyler Moore, and he also was most recently seen in a posthumous performance in Muppets Haunted Mansion. Rest in peace, Ed Asner. And then Tim Curry as Jean-Claude, one of the leaders of the resistance. Tim Curry would appear many times over the course of Dinosaurs, 7 times to be exact, voicing a different character each time. He was just a fan of and friend of the Muppet family, of course, again, also being heavily featured as Long John Silver in Muppet Treasure Island. So yeah, he pops in there. I'm like, yeah, that is Tim Curry. And he, just shout out to Tim Curry, always doing fun, weird stuff.
Oh yeah,
because he also
awesome. And I love he's just down for whatever.
Exactly. He was like, the thing I was going to also shout out was he was in the animated series of Mighty Ducks back when I talked about that earlier this year. Diving into a little bit of the trivia for the Mighty Megalosaurus, we have, even though Dinosaurs is a family-friendly show, this episode is rated PG, and this admittedly also would have predated the TV rating stuff. So this is it has been rated PG after the fact because Earl does swear in that first episode. And the episode also establishes Earl's name as Earl Sneed Sinclair, establishing Fran's habit of using Earl's full name when she is annoyed with him. family challenge. This episode takes place in October of the year 60,000,003 BC, and I love the jokes kind of we get throughout. Like, if I don't get why, if this is the year 6,000,003 BC, why is next year 6,000,002 BC? Why are we counting down? Being a lovely gag to the calendar. When Earl realizes that it's what is this? When Earl realizes that that his house is the thing that's on TV, he sings a little bit of the song from Bye Bye Birdie. We've got a lot of living to do, because of course they think the meteor is coming to crash. Then, as a goof that you identified here, when Fran marks off the days on the calendar, we see that there are only 30 days in October. But in the episode Little Boy Boo, a neighbor yells at Robbie and Baby for coming over on the 31st of October asking for candy, obviously as a Halloween reference. Yeah, I appreciate even when they did like the cutaways to the calendars, like counting the days down. It's just like time going in reverse, basically.
Yeah, I love all the like attention to detail with weird little things like that.
Yeah. For a new leaf, the baby paraphrases the iconic "This is your brain on drugs" PSA before he hits Earl with the frying pan, while Spike also parodies the "Help me, I've fallen and I can't get up" line from the Life Call commercial. Additionally, the original scene where Fran discovers Richfield is eating the happy plant included Jimi Hendrix's Purple Haze, and in the streaming version, it is replaced with an original song, "I'm a Happy Guy," because licensing. In the episode Georgie Must Die, there's a recurring inside joke where Earl has to open the mouth of his Georgie costume to see who's in front of him. The real-life puppeteer inside the Earl costume could only see through Earl's mouth to know where he was walking. This is why Earl was constantly huffing and sighing during the show when he was exacerbated over something. Love that, because of course. Georgie is, of course, a parody of Barney and Friends from 1992. Barney is also owned by a company called Henson International Television, or HIT. Jim Henson, of course, was involved in that show and a co-founder of HIT. Although I think that would have, Barney at least would have come out after Jim Henson's passing, so maybe he was involved in the kind of like brainstorming and creation of the idea. This is the second parody of Barney used in the series, where the first was a red dinosaur named Blarney. And then finally, as we kind of alluded to earlier, this is the final episode and series finale of Dinosaur, although Dinosaur's changing nature was always intended to be the true finale that we alluded to earlier. So yeah, what did you think, kind of circling back to this, how does it hold up all these years later, Frank?
I think it actually holds up really well, at least in my opinion. Like I, if any, kind of like, I think you would hit the nail on the head with the main thing is like going back to it as an adult. I feel like it's a lot funnier, and I understand a lot more things that just would have went over my head or just wouldn't even really even like made sense. But I thought a lot of it was like, it's not like this could have just been like a cheap kids show or something dumb, but I feel like the writing is actually really like smart and actually funny a lot of the times. And it really struck me in a weird way how I never realized how inspired by like the Flintstones it is.
Yeah.
Like where even their house and the shot of the city just feels like totally the Flintstones, and he's totally like a Fred Flintstone, Barney Rubble kind of like dad.
Yeah.
So like I thought that was like I think that I never realized like those kind of inspirations there and how well they even kind of hit that and actually nailed that some of those same beats and some of those same like jokes and things, and even like that right out the gate with like the frozen dinner thing, like that, I feel like that's totally a thing you could have got in like Flintstones or something. But it's one of those like hard things where it's like a lot of the times it's funny for like everybody even, but it doesn't have to just be like dumb kid humor, if that makes sense. Like I feel like that's like a highlight that like it's like a really like legitimately funny show that I would just watch now even as an adult. Like I would just continue to watch more episodes.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's fascinating watching it as an adult compared to obviously when I was a kid, because I can see those like very clear references to the Flintstones, to the Simpsons of that era, to, like the family sitcom, workplace sitcom in general. It is very much like tapping into all those things. So much so that, like I mentioned before we started recording, one of the weird aspects of the show is that it doesn't, by and large, obviously, it doesn't have a live studio audience like a lot of these kinds of shows would have if it was human performers, real life performers, not having to juggle the animatronic faces and stuff like that. But then the like the fact that they don't, by and large, use a laugh track for the show means they're still telling jokes at that cadence of a sitcom that you would expect a laugh track to play on, but they're not there. Apart from the Family Feud episode that we get in here, that is all about making fun of television, and that's another aspect. So the 4 episodes that we watch, of course, we have kind of our pilot episode introducing everybody through the narrative of like the birth of the baby character. Then we have the family challenge. It's basically like a Family Feud parody, but also like the evils of television, a prime target around that era, but also, continuing on till today. Then we have the like very special episode of everybody just getting into the pot, which again, I definitely did not pick up on as a kid. I just I didn't get that it was like such an overt like drug reference, and that like, hey, it just makes everybody happy. It's not really hurting anybody kind of thing. And even when they like kind of like break character at the end, it's not that we're, especially because like realizing that like the Henson kind of like the Muppet, like that whole crew is like bohemian 70s and like actors and like hippies and stuff. So of course,
Oh yeah,
they are a pro drug friendly kind of like crew. So it's not even that they're like, hey, drugs are bad for you. It's drugs are only bad because we then have to get into this whole routine of doing this like very special episode to tell you drugs are bad. Like that's more what they're saying, like, so don't do drugs so we don't have to do these kinds of dumb episodes. Is like, that's a fun little spin on it. And then yeah, we get of course the I would say like maybe the weakest episode of these 4 in today's lens is the Barney episode, just because of how irrelevant Barney has been for many, many years. But if you reskin it instead of Barney at like over the years as like the Teletubbies, or now it would maybe be, I mean, I don't know who the live action character would be, but it would be like the Bluey, or whatever all the kids watch this, Coco Melon, whatever like is the thing that children are like keeping an eye on, and like that's what's raising kids or whatever.
I imagine a lot of parents identified with that though.
Oh yeah,
because that even goes back to the doll thing about like my mom hating the doll. I imagine there were so many parents who were like, no, I'm tired of my kid watching this tape over and over and over again. So it's a whole episode about a dad that just wants to end this for everyone.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, like, even there, the episode is doing that kind of meta flavored thing that early Simpsons do as well, of like realizing that like the baby is the catchphrase thing and is that version of the character, but in this show. So like they kind of do that thing of like, as they're making fun of the Barney character, they're also making fun of the baby character, and referencing how annoying that character is as well. So yeah, like just like a lot of fun in here, and then also still a lot of great Muppet work.
Absolutely.
In the writing, in the performances, of course. Like I will always be a fan of the Howard Hand Up Me kind of character, because especially just the name Howard Hand Up Me, of course, is a wonderful gag. But even the fact that it is like it sets up in that first episode, and then we see it revisited at least once across these other episodes. Like it's set up that recurring gag that would kind of exist throughout the series of like the meteor coming down to crash. It's always imminent, it's ever present kind of thing. And in that first episode, it's like a meteor is coming to Earth, never mind. And then in the family challenge episode, it does, but it's like it's not the big one, it just destroys their one TV. But then, as we already kind of alluded to, we would also get it in the finale, with more raised stakes. But yeah, the name Howard Hand Up Me, of course, I think is like an old staple of the Muppet Show and just Muppets over the years. So it's always a fun kind of getting that type of character in there. But what really caught my eye, I think, from the Muppet presentation of things was the like how good the animatronics were and how detailed they
Yeah.
were, in the faces in particular. Like even like it would be very easy for it to just be like a Barney type of thing where it's like, oh, it's just kind of like a flapping mouth or whatever. But it is like, they can like do little like smiles at the end of the smile or whatever, like just the cheek comes up or just an eyebrow raises or something like that. Like there was a lot of like articulation in the face, of all these characters. And I was like, that's like really, really cool, especially I guess in contrast to, since it's relatively fresh in my mind since we watched the Empire of Dreams
Yeah.
documentary for our summer Star Wars, like seeing the outtakes of Yoda's eyes just not pointing in the right directions or like the face just not working and stuff. I'm sure there were a ton of those kinds of problems on Dinosaurs, but the finished product ends up coming across like really, really solid and really strong. So that was definitely something else that jumped out at me.
Yeah, like I don't have the same history of like with the Muppets that you do of like, so I don't have as much experience with a lot of like the puppetry and animatronics and stuff, but that like watching it now, and like when I was a kid obviously I didn't pay attention to like production stuff, but
Mhm.
now being so much more interested in production and stuff, like just movies and TV in general, knowing that like that Muppet, like the puppetry and the animatronics is like so much harder to do than just filming a sitcom.
Yeah.
And the fact that like they did it, but they did it well. Like, cause like you said, it could have just been a Barney suit. And in my memory, it was just a guy in a costume,
Mhm.
but it's because I didn't know how it worked. I'm like, yeah, it's just one guy in a costume doing whatever. But now I'm like, no, there was 3 people operating each one of these things.
Yeah.
And then they just said, all right, well, we're the best at this. So we're going to do a full dance sequence. Like,
Yeah.
and it's the thing of like during the dance sequence, it's shot full body. They don't like cut and do weird like edits and cuts to like fake it. There's like eyes and mouths moving in the faces like during the dance, and I was really blown away by that in particular. But really just like all of the animatronics and the puppetry is like really good. And
Yeah.
because it's a thing of like, even if you didn't know, it would almost just feel more real, like it if this was just like a sitcom kind of thing. Like it just feels so natural. It doesn't feel like a weird kind of thing, or at least for me it didn't.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's one of those things like as a kid it wouldn't have bothered me, and as an adult I'm like, there is a guy in that suit, there is somebody with like an RC, remote control kind of thing controlling the faces of these characters and then there is the person doing the voice. And now that person doing the voice probably isn't there like on set, or maybe they are. I don't know. But like all of that coming together is really impressive. And actually it is probably like they probably were somehow like all working in tandem, because it would have been like a real pain to try and do like lip syncing and stuff
Yeah.
after the fact. And there are elements where like when you do get like a shot from behind or something, clearly they're not putting in all that extra work on like the reverse shots sometimes. And it's a little easy to tell that kind of stuff. But like one of the only times in these episodes that really jumped out at me as like oh, that's an element of like, oh, they clearly had to like figure out a workaround on that, was like and I don't remember which episode it was, but it was like it might have been the New Leaf episode where Earl goes in and gives BP a hug, because it's
Yeah.
like clearly the set with BP was like a static thing, like it's just that animatronic kind of thing. And then you see the other side, you always only ever see the other side, like full body Earl. And they needed like Earl to go in and like give a hug, so it's like clearly like Earl walking and doing like a green screen hug kind of thing against, and they just kind of superimpose that against the live action BP or whatever. And that was like the only thing where I was like, oh, they didn't do that practically. Where versus like so much of this is like that practical work that feels like a lost art almost,
Oh
these
yeah,
days,
yeah.
30 years later. Um, and I think there's, obviously something missing when we don't have those kinds of elements, in a really fun and engaging way. Um, any particular standout gags or bits that you wanted to kind of call out or reference across the
Yeah,
episodes?
one of the ones I did like a lot was in the Georgie Must Die episode, because then he gets kind of like convinced her that he has to take him to go see Georgie. But I love he walks out and the line's right there. Like it's so
Yeah, oh
far
yeah, yeah.
because they established the mall. He says it's like, yeah, the mall's 10 minutes away. And he walks out and then there's just a line at his front door already. And I was like, that's really funny.
I like I knew that was coming. I don't know if that was because I remember that joke from watching the show all those years ago, or if it was just like, okay, they've done the legwork to set it up. So yeah, as soon as he opens the door, the line's going to be right there to his house, and boom, there it was. Yeah, I appreciate that as well. And that was like I was surprised by like how much of this I remembered, and it was just like in phases. It was like the memories kind of like flooding back to me. The kid, of course, like the baby, in the first episode, like
Oh yeah.
all of their lines kind of coming back. But then in the Family Challenge episode, like the grandma character being like the
Yeah.
first time of these 4 episodes that we get introduced to, I was like, yep, I remember that character immediately, and like her attitude towards Earl, because again, like so much of this is just the archetypal kind of family. I mean, it is the Simpsons, it is the Flintstones, it is King of Queens, it is Mike and Molly, it is the like the schlubby guy and the wife and the kids. It's Family Matters. It's all of those things.
Oh yeah.
And it's just hitting. It is the traditional family sitcom, but told with people wearing giant dinosaur costumes.
But that's like, I like that you can get weird with it, because
Yep.
then they even have the bit with her where he was like, "What makes you the history expert?" And she was like, "I was there," and
Yeah.
he's like, "Oh, okay." Like, and that's
Yeah.
like that's like a super funny thing.
Yep. And I love like just going off like the first episode, I love the little tag bit at the end of like the dad and baby kind of being like, who knows how long we're gonna rule the world, and then it like cuts out to like early caveman kind of thing, and they like they discover the wheel, and then they smash it over the head and hula hoop a little bit. I was like, yep, that is a quintessential Muppet kind of joke. Always love that kind of thing. I like what do we have? We like yeah, I love like the America's Funniest Home Videos parody is another thing. Like,
Yeah.
as somebody who like that was, basically like I saw too much of my own family in that episode of us as a family around the dinner table watching America's Funniest Home Videos. And that was when I specifically remember that gag of like the kid falling into the volcano, and just being like, "Yep, that's America's Funniest Home Videos to the extreme."
But I love the bit where it's like Pangea's
Yeah,
whatever,
exactly, yeah.
like prehistoric videos.
Pangea's Funniest Home Injuries is how they dubbed that one. Yeah. And then
I liked the follow up to that too, when she goes, "Well, yeah, when this is on, you're just gonna watch the next thing," and it's like Pangea's second funniest
Yeah.
injuries, and
Yeah.
then he's like, "I actually like that one more."
Mhm.
Like that was a little tagline that I thought was really funny when he's like,
Yeah.
"I like that one more, actually."
I love the subversion of like, oh, they've lost the TV and they're gonna like they're still gonna go and like try and be on this thing, but they're learning as a family together. The animal, vegetable, or rock, and fire is a vegetable, and water is the opposite of fire. So like that whole thing is just like none of that makes sense, but it's hilariously written kind of thing. But I love the premise that like, they come together as a family, and it's it's the best time, and hey, it's all that like that great kind of meta commentary of like, hey, maybe when we turn off the TV, things can be better, like they're all doing better in school or smarter or whatever. And then you get on they get on the show, and all of the categories are just TV, 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 more TV, last night's TV, last week's TV. Love that as a gag. And then they get the opportunity to like completely win the game because Earl, of course, could have easily eaten the little, marsupial character or whatever in the cage of death, but they do the like, no, we're gonna play it by our family way, kind of whatever. And I couldn't remember when that last thing is, what lesson did they learn? If it was gonna be that he the lesson he has learned is the same lesson that they learned in on the show or whatever. But then as soon as he started talking, I was like, oh no, that's going to be completely wrong and they're going to make fun of him for it. And he's like, yeah, you are way off, buddy. But hey, here's your consolation prize. I was like, perfect. So
that's why I love the lesson he did learn too. It's like, no, he learned not to give whoever your keys.
Exactly. Yeah.
And he's like, oh, I guess that's a good lesson too.
Yeah. And then there were a couple of wonderful jokes I loved in the New Leaf episode. Shout out to why is our numbering system based on 10 when we only have 8 fingers and 8 toes kind of thing? Like, I feel like the Simpsons have done that same kind of joke, but it might have taken them a little bit longer to get to it than Dinosaurs did. But yeah, that's always a gag that will get me. And then again, as we kind of touched on earlier, I love that ends with Robbie kind of breaking character and being like, let me tell you why we just did this very special episode, because we have to do this very special episode because that's the kind of show we do. So stop doing drugs so we don't have to keep doing these kinds of very special episodes. I was like, nice.
I love that as the end cap for that. And I even love, I love everything about it. Cause I love that he starts with hey, I'm Robbie Sinclair. And I play Robbie Sinclair on Dinosaurs.
Yeah.
And then he's and he just had walk, and it's totally just that classic thing. He's walking through the set and he gets his mug or whatever. And he's just talking to the camera. And I love that he even has the line of we did a good job, but most shows aren't that lucky.
Yeah.
They're taking pot shots at other specials.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that is the best possible way that I think they could have ended that. And I think that's honestly just a really funny and good episode. And one of the things I think I had mentioned, it might have even been before recording, but I'm it was I appreciate that it's a very accurate look at what that would be and what that would be of it's oh, it's the happy plant, and there's different reactions to it. That one guy, I mentioned, I thought it was funny that he's super paranoid all of a sudden. He's you guys think I'm paranoid. And then I love when they're talking in the room and he busts in. And he's you guys talking about me in here?
Yeah.
But it's that is just that happens for people. And so I think it's just funny how there was more of a realistic take. And then even the downside of what could be bad about it is just they're oh, well, now you're lazy and you don't want to work and you don't want to do whatever, or so I appreciate that it's not just it's not that thing of this is a gateway or this is going to be end your whole life or whatever. I felt it was a more, for being Dinosaurs, it's a more realistic take on what this is and what it'll do to you. Because the comparison I made when I was watching it with one of my friends is I remember the Saved by the Bell episode where there's the sleazy movie producer and he has one joint at a party.
Yeah.
And it puts such a nasty spin on it.
Mm-hmm.
So I was I appreciate that this has a more, I felt earnest take. And I think you had a great point where yeah, what kind of came from this Henson company background, and they were totally just hippies, and they have a much better philosophy on a lot of this stuff. But
yeah.
My ultimate point there, not to just throw it on, but I just thought I appreciate you could have a very special episode that tells a point, but not just have it be this is your brain and you're smashing a kitchen and eggs and stuff,
Yeah. Yeah, no, I really just liked how they kind of subverted that. And yeah, they do they kind of hit all of the touchstones. They have, everybody just kind of lighter than air happy and completely fine with getting fired, because it means that now they get to spend more time with their family or be happier, at not dealing with the consequences of those actions, because they're not bothered by the consequences of those actions. And so it's this weird the consequences of those actions are only severe because the society thinks that they're severe. If you could just be happy and enjoy that plant, cool, you're not hurting anybody. And so yeah, I appreciated that. Yeah, it's not it's trying to demonize everything, and it's incredibly progressive for 92, 93 television or whenever that was on.
Oh yeah,
that episode, that's like that's the kind of thing that would like have a hard time making its way on like mainstream TV. Like it'd be fine on like a maybe a cable channel or like a streaming service or something like that. But like even today, like if you tried to do that episode on like, you know, a CBS thing, it would be like, no, you have to demonize it more. Like you can't just say drugs are fine and make you happy.
Yeah.
So yeah, just I love that. Like that it's almost like it's almost like the message of the episode went over the TV execs heads as well, and they were just like, fine, whatever, you guys are doing your weird Muppet thing, go crazy. But yeah, and then
I wonder if
yeah.
the fact it was like a Muppet thing, and I don't mean like, you know, related to the company, but because it wasn't like literal people and it was like puppetry and like animatronic, I wonder if that gave them more leeway to get like weird with it or to get like more real with it. And like I wonder if they didn't, you know, like I just wonder if a TV executive was like, it's dinosaurs, like what are they going to do, right? And then you have people like writing the show, just like sneaking stuff like that in.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure. And in the same way that like, you know, the like the Simpsons or like Futurama or whatever, like they got away with a lot of extra stuff because people weren't paying as close attention, or because it is like, well, they can't like the thing that kind of I imagine probably gave them the leeway here is they're not smoking anything. They are literally just eating a plant. And that plant happens to be a pretty perfect stand-in for weed, but like they're not smoking joints or you know, like taking bong riffs or something like that. So like they so they could kind of pass it off as, well, kids aren't going to actually go out there and like eat plants trying to be happy. That's not a thing that's not a lesson they're going to take away from this episode. Like we don't really have to worry about them trying to do that, versus like if it had been like that joint that is like iconic and bad, that kind of vibe would have you know, that flavor that the episode might have had otherwise. Because I mean, like, also think about like at this time, I could still go buy like at this time I probably could have still bought like gum cigarettes in like convenience stores. I definitely could have still bought like Big League Chew as like gum chewing tobacco, basically. So like
I mean, yeah, because those were still around when I was a kid, even. Yeah. So those were definitely around for like a minute.
Yeah, it was just kind of like they didn't care about kids as much back then either. Anyway, so then moving on to the final episode there, Georgie Must Die. This is actually the one like I took the least amount of notes on compared to like all my other ones, because I was just enjoying the episode, and like I definitely remembered like I was too old for Barney when Barney came out on and out, so I wasn't like watching Barney, but it was, you know, of course, part of the zeitgeist. So like I knew Barney and I knew the like I love you, you love me song. Because it was fucking everywhere. So like I can still enjoy this episode because of that and because of those like elements. And but like even if I couldn't, it's still fun because they set up the premise that this is just like, this is a, you know, a thing that has kind of like enamored kids so much so that there's a line right to your door from the mall. But then like they have this just fun element of it where it's like he's, you know, an evil super villain kind of thing, trying to like take over, you know, the minds of the kids, and then it goes like a step further and they've got like a liberation front of like French characters like Claude, played by Tim Curry, coming in and trying to use Earl's impression of the character to then take over like and like right the wrongs that the character. It's just like they didn't need to like add that twist on top of a twist on it, but I appreciate that they did. Helps stand out, and it makes it just a little bit more fun of an episode. Had a good time with it.
Oh yeah, no, I'm 100% with you there, because that's definitely like my favorite part of that is kind of them in the jail cell with him. Because I even love like when Tim Curry is like going over the plan and kind of giving him the exposition and the info, and then she's like, "Oh, you're so great, make love to me," and I was like, "Oh wow, this is like wild."
Exactly,
like,
right? Yeah. So this is a kids show. Yeah, and I also love the one joke I want to give a call out to is the like, Earl making fun of the costume and saying it looks like your carpet, Roy, and then them figuring out like when the baby realizes he can do the voice or close enough to the voice, they're like, Roy's just like, yeah, but where are we gonna find something that has the same consistency of my carpet? And I like tying it into jumping ahead a little bit to like what else are we watching. I also sat down and watched Enchanted, and so
nice.
like watching that, and then also like watching this make the reference of making the costume out of the carpet, and then watching Enchanted where she makes all of her dresses out of the drapes and the stuff around the apartment. I'm like, nice, just a week of making costumes out of household like fabrics. I found that quite enjoyable. So yeah, any last thoughts on Dinosaurs before we wrap up?
Yeah, I mean, I really just thought it was a surprisingly like fun show. Like, I definitely remember it being good, but it's one of those things of like, does it hold up? And and sometimes as we've gone back to like the decoms and stuff, like those don't always hold up. So like, this was one where I'm like, I genuinely think that I hold this in like a higher regard than I did is like quality TV. Like, this is a really good show, and I might even continue watching some of those episodes on Disney Plus since the whole series is up. And I know like there's some I remember and some I remember seeing and looking in the set, like the listing of all the shows that are streaming or the episodes.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's some I don't remember, but like I can tell just by the name or the description that they are more like pop culture references and like jokes on like general sitcom like plots. And I'm like, I love that this show is just like had like so much going for it, where it was even just deconstructing like sitcoms and like in just general plot lines and stuff. Like you wouldn't expect that from where they're dressed like dinosaurs.
Exactly.
So that's when I was like,
it's a show that is doing like when, I mean, making the reference again to Saved by the Bell, that was doing like a real heartfelt, anti-drugs episode, or of course the like I'm so excited episode, or like the very special episodes that like Saved by the Bell had were commonplace for all of those kinds of sitcoms. And so like this is just a parody of the family sitcom, in the same way that like the Flintstones was a parody of the family sitcom, and you can get away with more things in animation like the Flintstones did, or here in puppetry form like the Dinosaurs did. But it's the kind of thing that, just looking at this like small snippet of Dinosaurs, like the Muppets in general, and the company, the Jim Henson company, does a great job of picking those targets, much like The Simpsons does when we talked about it in the recent Treehouse of Horrors episode. They don't, like, the Barney reference aside, they pick topics that are more timeless in nature. Like Family Feud, I guess, could also be like but like by the time they were making a parody of Family Feud was a game show that had been going on for like 30 years at that point, or 20 years.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
They probably didn't know that it was going to continue to be going on and would eventually be hosted by Steve Harvey today. Because I mean, this would have been before even like the Louis Anderson era of like, this was still like the Richard
Kind, or
not Richard Kind.
Karn?
Maybe Richard Karn.
Richard Karn?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. Like the original host kind of like era of Family Feud. Like that. I mean, it's because they definitely like reference him, because he notoriously would like, kiss all the women kind of thing. And
that was hilarious.
This one does
like
that as
is dead on.
Yeah.
Like I like that is dead on if you ever watched old Family Feud like that, and how even kind of creepy it is. And like but even love like even the bit where he gets to the grandma and he's like, and the next family.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, no, I'm not gonna do that today. But yeah, like so the tropes that like they're kind of making fun of are tropes that existed long before this show and have continued existing on even now 30 years later after the fact. And so they're like in that regard, they are kind of timeless, and you don't need to like know the specific reference they're making. I mean, it's almost like the thing that kind of makes like Shakespeare great and timeless. If you really read like into the footnotes of a Shakespeare play, he's a lot of times making a very specific reference to a thing that was like existing in that moment or whatever, but like the broad strokes of the thing are timeless kinds of tales, and you don't have to have that like in the moment history element to it, much like a lot of the best Simpsons and again here these dinosaur episodes. So yeah, shout out to Dinosaurs here. So let's go ahead and grade it on the report card from A+ to F. What do you want to give Dinosaurs here, Frank?
I think for me, it's an A+. Like, I was kind of definitely thinking like A or A+, but like I don't have too much that I really like hold against it. Like, there wasn't really too like not all the jokes landed for me all the time, but I mean that's just most things. And like so I really just had a better time than I probably even thought I would. I wasn't really sure if it was going to hold up or not, but I was excited to go back and just revisit this thing I used to watch like forever ago. And it was so long ago. I only remember bits and pieces of different things. Like I don't have that like like with like other sitcoms like Fresh Prince. I just remember every episode so vividly. I could tell it to you right now. This is like it's like getting to experience like that like nostalgia, but just like it's also brand new for me. So it's like I think it's an A+ for me for sure.
Yeah, I think I'll join you on that for a lot of the same reasons. Like this is a show that I remember watching. I don't know if I've seen every episode of the series, maybe not. But like I definitely remembered elements of each of these episodes. So like there was like enough of a touchstone there that, and it was the same kind of thing of like I didn't know these like the back of my hand, but like the characters and stuff just like immediately started kind of coming back to me and like rushing back into the memory. And it is that like it's nostalgia, but not like nostalgia trying to like it's not I mean it's not trying to be nostalgic because it wasn't trying to be nostalgic. I mean
Yeah.
maybe to a little degree in that like it's it's all in the family kind of thing and telling those same kinds of sitcoms from the 70s, but like it's for me here in 2021 it's just kind of like enjoying this thing from my childhood that I haven't thought about a ton in the 30 years since I probably originally was watching these episodes, but it was still comfort food kind of going back to it, and the fact that so many of the jokes still stand and are funny, and then just like as an adult having an appreciation for the writing and the production value of the stuff. I definitely think, definitely stands out as shout out to Dinosaurs. Extra credit, other suggestions if you like this. This was one of the most eclectic ones of these that I think I've seen. These are the things that Disney Plus will suggest to you. So we have Boy Meets World, which makes sense again, kind of a common co-creator there, and then also the family sitcom aspect of it. You have Good Luck Charlie, which is a thing I don't really know.
It's a Disney Channel sitcom, but it's like a new one from like the 2000 something.
Yeah. Diary of a Future President, a like very, very new Disney Plus original series.
Oh, interesting.
Like also kind of family sitcom, but like not this kind of family sitcom, not like not traditional family sitcom. Earth to Ned, which is more on the Muppet side of things. It was a Muppets type of show, like a Muppets talk show effectively, but not with the Muppets, just with other Muppet like other characters by the Jim Henson Company, kind of thing. You have Dinosaur, which is the like early 2000s maybe Disney animated, like Disney CG animated movie. We have Wizards of Waverly Place. We have Stuck in the Middle, and then wrapping up we have Lizzie Mcguire as the suggestions on that one. Extracurriculars, you watching anything else on Disney Plus there, Frank?
Not really at the moment. I am excited to go back and rewatch Shang-Chi, like I think I may have mentioned before, but that is that's what I have queued up, but I don't really have anything else at the moment.
Yeah. As I mentioned, so we obviously last week was Disney Plus Day on that Friday, and they'd kind of teased a few things already. So like Enchanted was one of the things they were like, hey, it's finally coming to Disney Plus. So I took the opportunity to sit down and watch it because it's been a while since I watched that movie. Still a ton of fun. It's and a great kind of deconstruction of the Disney princess kind of thing that like is made that much better by the fact that it's a Disney backed thing. So like because I forget every time I watch it, like how much setup that they do in Andalasia, like in the animated like world of the princess kind of like finding her true love or whatever before they come to New York and come to the real world and stuff like that. And so yeah, they like it has Disney animation, Disney classic 2D animation, and then just kind of goes into the real world stuff. Has a ton of like fun references. It might be one that I'll want to try and do that D plus show somewhere along the line, because there's a ton of fun little trivia and stuff through there in terms of like guest performances and stuff like that. I also started watching Shang-Chi again. Like I threw it on, started watching it because it's just really good.
Oh yeah,
watched like the bus fight like 2 or 3 times. Like I watched it and I was like, that was really cool. Gonna rewind it because it's just like a great mix of action and the music.
Oh yeah.
Even the opening fight between like the mom and dad kind of figures and like in the flashback or whatever, like like watching that, I'm just like, man, this is like some sexy ass flirting fight flirting that they have going on there. So yeah,
100%.
Shang-Chi, real good. Definitely go check that out. And I think,
did you I don't want to get into a side tangent, but there was a thread on Twitter of a bus operator broke down the bus fight from Shang-Chi.
I saw it. I saw that in trending kind of stuff. I didn't actually sit down and like look at the thread. But I do appreciate that kind of thing exists. Because I like in seeing it, I saw like a little bit more about like, I didn't see the thread itself, but I saw like articles about the thread, and one of them was like pointing out that the guy has really only been working as a bus driver for like a month or whatever, but it's like all of like the safety and security stuff is like really fresh in his mind because of that, because he's been going through all the training stuff. So he's coming at it from that perspective. And so yeah, I thought that was a fun little thing out there on the Twitter sphere.
Yeah. I thought it was funny, and my favorite part of it as a highlight was that he was like, you want to pull there's a yellow emergency brake off to like the right, you want to pull that, and then he gets to a part where there's like a shot of the dash or whatever, and he took like a screenshot and he circled it and like fogged everything else out. He's like, it's this, everybody, it's this. And now I'm like, oh, now I know what to do if I'm ever in like a runaway bus. I know where like the emergency brake is.
There you go. Yeah, I kind of related to that, I watched I'm a fan of the YouTube series How It Should Have Ended, and they released the Shang-Chi one today, and I watched that like basically right before we hopped on to record. So shout out to the team over there at Hizzy. So yeah, I think that's pretty much all I watched. I might like, because they were like, hey, here's a whole bunch of like shows we're teasing or something like that, I think I sat down and watched like the little featurette that they did for like Obi-Wan, that show coming up and stuff like that. I probably checked out a couple of those in the last week or so, but on Shang-Chi, I also want to check out the Assembled that they did for that, because those tend to be really good, like the behind the scenes kind of making of things. So yeah, lots of cool stuff out there for people, both as a result of Disney Plus Day as well as like the upcoming things. I did see, and I'll have to put this kind of in our doc for because we of course are gonna be doing holiday stuff in December, and it came up in one of our conversations. I don't know if it was with you, it might have been with Logan, but we were like, is Jingle All the Way on Disney Plus? Because I was like, I feel like I remember it being on Disney Plus, and then but when we were talking about it, it was not on Disney Plus. It is coming back to Disney Plus, so
hell yeah,
we will probably work that into our holiday programming this year, doing some Jingle All the Way. Get that Arnold Schwarzenegger Turbo Man.
That's a great movie. I'm down to rewatch that. I haven't seen that since I was a kid. Like I haven't seen that in forever.
Yeah, it should be a fun one. It's one of those that like I haven't watched it in a long time either, but I've like watched like Honest Trailers did a video on it not too long ago, and it's like Arnold Schwarzenegger as like an insurance salesman in the Midwest or something like that. It's like when you think about that, it's like, oh, this was very clearly not written for Arnold Schwarzenegger. This is not a movie that was written for Arnold Schwarzenegger. Somebody was just like, let's get Arnold Schwarzenegger and completely cast him against type in a thing that makes zero sense. And sure, they end up doing it and having some fun with it. That Arnold Schwarzenegger Sinbad twofer.
I wonder if like an executive saw like Kindergarten Cop and was like, this guy.
Yeah.
It's like, he's got it.
Maybe.
He's got what we need.
Yeah. So, stay tuned for that possibility coming in the coming weeks. The current plan, I think, for next week, because next week's episode is basically going to be like right after Thanksgiving. I think we're going to try and do Hawkeye. And I just need to figure out who we're getting, because Hawkeye is going to come out basically on Thanksgiving Day. And depending on like if we take the day off from recording or anything, like next week's episode might be a day late or something like that. We might record on Friday and then upload it on Saturday as opposed to our normal Friday uploads, but we will see. So, keep an eye out, but that's pretty much the plan for next week is the first, I think, couple episodes of Hawkeye come out on Thanksgiving Day. So that's probably what we will focus on for next week's episode. And then December is going to be a whole bunch of holiday stuff. We're talking Santa Claus 2, Home Alone 2, Jingle All the Way, and then 2 others that we need to fill in because there is a 5-week thing. I don't know. I'm not hearing great things about Sweet Home Alone or whatever it's called, like Sweet Home Alone, whatever that one is. I'm not hearing great things about it. Also was never expecting great things from it, but maybe we'll do that one. Who knows? But yeah.
If not, well, I'm still pulling for Richie Rich's Christmas Wish.
That's another one that I definitely saw in the docket, or like because Disney Plus basically tweeted out like here's the Disney Plus originals that you can watch with a holiday theme, and then here's like the movies you can watch, and then like here's holiday episodes of different shows, and in the movies you can watch, Richie Rich Holiday Wish was certainly in the running there. So maybe we will do that one.
If you want to go crazy, maybe we can just watch all the like the Christmas episodes of the show. Like, and just bring in that, like, I was going to say Fresh Prince, but Fresh Prince is not on Disney Plus. So I immediately am like, I don't know what show we would do then.
Right. Yeah. But stay tuned for all those upcoming episodes of That D Plus show in the coming weeks. That is going to do it for this episode of That D Plus show. Thank you, Frank, for joining me to talk about dinosaurs and taking this fun little trip down nostalgia lane. You follow Frank at Irrelevant Jokes. Anything you want to give a shout out to, Frank?
Yeah. Just a quick shout out to our other podcast, That Nerdy Site Show. This most recent episode was you and Cam talking about some of the games you've been playing, and I'm still not all the way through it, but it's been interesting so far because Airborne Kingdom definitely sounds pretty interesting. Mm-hmm. And then I know you got inspired to go immediately start playing it after that podcast. So if that tells you anything, like you might want to go check it out then. Yeah,
it's like he was describing Airborne Kingdom, and I started like watching a video of it like while he's telling me about it. I'm like, oh, this is basically like a SimCity kind of like a SimCity city builder, but in the sky. And then you're kind of like going around the world and like having to kind of like it's that mixed with like a resource gathering like sim strategy game of like, okay, you need lumber, so you've got to like send your planes down to the ground to a forest to like gather those resources and bring them back up to your ship so that you can build housing and stuff like that. And I was just like, it's really cool. And yeah, I basically immediately sat down and recorded a Let's Play of it that you can also find on our YouTube, youtube.com/thatnerdysite. You follow me at Trevor J. Starkey. The other thing I will plug is this week's That News You Care About is me and Logan sitting down and running through the 2021 Game Awards nominees that just came out this week. Kind of making our predictions for who's going to win big at the Game Awards this year, and for him and I, who's gonna take the crown. I beat him quite handily last time we did this last year, and I'm hoping I can fulfill that once again this year. Basically, we made a Portillo's bet on the line because he booked his trip. He's going to be coming out and visiting Arizona here in January. It looks like so. We'll actually go to Portillo's and either he'll be buying or I'll be buying. Whoever wins gets some free Portillo's in January. You follow all of us over at That Nerdy Site or go to thatnerdysite.com for all the latest from us. Once again, if you liked what you heard, please remember to like, rate, review, subscribe, share the podcast with your friends, all that fun stuff. Thank you for joining us. As always, stay nerdy, be good to each other, and class dismissed.